Hey everyone, you're listening to Music Posting. I'm Alex.
And I'm Astrid. And today we're reviewing the new, no, it's not a new one, Björk Post. It's old. It's really old. It's from 1995. But first, we wanted to say thanks so much for all the freaking support on the podcast. It's been crazy.
Yeah, whether you're listening to us on YouTube or on Spotify, I think didn't really expect things to take off how they have. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, people are so
Um,
nice. We're freaking number 7 in the music podcasts already on Spotify. We're goated with the sauce.
and also thank you so much everyone for leaving like cool comments on Spotify, for example, like this one from Kai. Great first episode. Quaranta feels like a mature evolution of Danny Brown, which I wasn't expecting due to STH, but it did surpass my expectations and is probably my fave album of his at the moment.
Yeah, it was really chill. I've listened to it a couple times since we did that episode. It's a good album.
Can I share this other comment from Jack?
Yeah, dude. What does Jack have to say?
So Jack says, I think Down With It has a lot of heavy references to the song Mind Playing Tricks on Me by Ghetto Boys in 1991. Give it a listen.
Oh, okay. Will do, Jack.
Yeah, thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, wowza.
Wowza. Yeah, so thanks again for all the awesome support. Today we're kind of delving back into the past. We're going back into the past where shitty games sucked ass. Do you get that reference?
I do not know. No,
Well,
tell me
there'll
about it.
be we're gonna let that one fly. There's gonna be 5 people that get that. We're covering an old Björk album. We're
Yeah.
covering Björk's Post, and the reason is because there's just no new albums around this time of the year, and so we're gonna look at some classics. And there's not really a better way to do it than covering an old Björk, huh? An old Björk.
Yeah, I'm
Björk.
pretty excited to dive into this Björk. Björk, the Icelandic art pop legend.
Can you do your Björk impression?
Thank you so much for suggesting this Icelandic art pop legend. I gave it my best.
Yeah, we just got to number 6 on the Spotify charts after that.
Yeah, we had a little celebration. Yeah. Yeah, no, you suggested this one for me.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. You're gonna like surprise me with like a curveball next week or something. It's gonna be like some avant-garde 1800s classical. And then I'm gonna be out of my field. But
yeah.
Björk's album released June 7th, 1995, almost 30 years ago, which is pretty crazy. And it was right after her debut, and this was kind of more of a boundary pushing album than Debut. Debut was kind of like the big, her new pop record, and it did pretty well. But this was meant to kind of take it a step further and delve into like kind of a harsher sound. Have you ever listened to Debut?
I haven't. So actually, I was really excited to get into Post because my experience with Björk was pretty much just Fossa. I'm not gonna lie, it was like hard for me to like super get into. I didn't revisit it after I listened to it, but
yeah, Fossora is so that's the Björk's newest album. It came out last year, I think, and it's a lot different than her old stuff because she used to make more like those first couple albums are basically just pop. You know what I mean? And nowadays she's she can do whatever she wants, so she's making like this avant-garde stuff that's like very kind of out there.
yeah,
it's a weird one.
yeah. It sounded like if you had just like hooked up a microphone to like mushrooms and just like didn't watch them, so the mushrooms like came alive and made some like mushroom music or something.
Yeah, I mean she's really into nature, and what's funny is that Post has a lot of those themes as well. You can kind of see those themes blossoming.
Yeah, I was getting that on this album too.
Yeah,
nice pun, by the way.
Yeah, and but nowadays, like, she does make a lot of albums just about nature, about flowers, about mushrooms. And if you watch a lot of the music videos for Fossora or any of the music videos in the past decade from her, they're very nature-esque. Just her kind of in the fields with all these kind of alien plants just sprouting and stuff. It's really cool. But yeah, this album was really successful. Björk was pretty huge in the 90s. She came from the Sugar Cubes, which was the band she was in prior, which has a lot of bops. There's this one dude that sings in it.
What kind of music were they making? The Sugar Cubes.
It's more just kind of rock, kind of pop rock. But
Okay.
it's jangly and it's fun. And you know, Björk's doing the same kind of vocals, but there's this one dude that like comes into the track and kind of does some like sing rapping, and he kind of ruins some Sugar Cube songs for me. but there's some good stuff in there too. I'm kind of bad with the names, but the Sugar Cubes were pretty epic. And you know, she had like a solo album she did as a kid in like the 70s when she was like 8.
What? That's
Yeah,
nuts.
it's no, you know, Michael Jackson's Ben, but it's got some pretty banger tracks, you know? It's
I
good
think
for an
that's
8-year-old.
yeah, I think that's still awesome.
And the
Yeah.
cover art is sick. It's, like, very banger. Everyone
How
should
would
look
you
that up.
how would you describe the cover art?
It's, like, doesn't seem like it was made in 1977. It's like it's this red album cover, and she's kinda, like, sitting on the ground, and there's just this big plant. It's very 70s, but it's also very future. I don't know, just look it up.
Interesting.
It's good. It's a good
W
cover.
Well, what I did know about Bjork was that she always was very forward thinking,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
because you hear a lot about her just in general in the music space, like actually, the first time, because I had seen the Bjork computer meme,
Mhm.
which I have a couple questions before we, like, really dive into the album.
Sure.
Um, I also saw her in this movie, I think called
The
The
Northman.
Northman. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was awesome in that movie, and like
Dude, I basically saw that movie because Björk was in
that's
it.
awesome.
Yeah, like, I mean, that the director is really good. I forget his name, but he's directed out some other good stuff. But Björk is, you know, if Björk's doing, if there are no Björk fans, you know, I'm the last one remaining. You know what I mean? You got me.
You're a Bjork stan.
I'm a Björk stan.
So yeah, I had a question for you because
Yeah.
you're the Bjork expert.
Oh
Um
God. Okay, I'm not the Björk expert, but
Well, we like as we can start talking about the album, but um one like as I was listening to this album, I kind of had like this one question pop up through
mhm.
my mind at certain points.
Okay.
Uh which is it ties into the whole like Bjork computer thing. Is Bjork like is she terminally online?
You know, I'm not sure, honestly. I know, so if anyone hasn't seen it, what Alex is kind of referring to is there's a lot of interviews of Björk where she's like, you know, talking about computers, and there's particularly a very, very engaging one where she's just kind of she's looking at the side of a computer. I think the case is open, and she's kind of like looking at the motherboard and talking to the interviewer, and she's just like, the the motherboard is like a little city, and you know, it's like the little nodes and the things and the cubes are like the towers. You know, she's like all like interested in it. It's very cute. It's endearing. It's the
Yeah.
'90s, you know, before computers were really as much of a well, that's not true. A lot of people that were really into it were doing it as a hobby, but you know, it wasn't everyone didn't have a computer in their home yet. Um,
Yeah.
and so you know what? She might be pretty terminally online. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much these days, but
Well, yeah, because what I had seen when I was doing like a preliminary, I guess, dive into Björk as I was trying to learn more about her and learn more about the context of the album, I
yeah.
saw that she would respond to fans on AOL
Oh,
chat asking
that's
questions.
awesome.
And
Really?
I feel like she must have been, especially some of the instrumentals and some of the lyrics, which we can get into.
Oh, super
Um,
computerized and digital.
yeah, and also she writes a lot about this, like, perspective of isolation. She's,
Mm.
like, a very isolated person, and I wonder if she adopted online early on to just, like, not feel as
And
isolated.
what's interesting about isolation with Björk too, and we'll get into the track list soon, but this is, you know, right before like a lot happened in her life, which I think maybe even caused her to become more isolated, like post. Which is honestly really sad. Like I don't know if you've heard about some stuff. Like she survived like a murder attempt,
Oh my god,
and
no, I hadn't heard
yeah,
about this.
and like there's that famous gif of her beating up a reporter.
I
Have you
have
seen
seen
that
that,
gif?
yeah.
That's the greatest gif ever, and 100% deserved. She was just getting harassed by a lot of reporters because you know she was getting pretty big off of these albums. You know, like this album Post, obviously like number one in Iceland. You know, because she's like the most famous person from Iceland. But it was even
Yeah,
like number two in the charts from in like the UK. Like it was huge in Europe. It even had some overseas appeal in America. And so reporters were following her everywhere she was going. And I think that particular GIF, you know, they were kind of asking her questions about her kid and stuff, and she just went animal on the reporter. And honestly, I Go off, Queen. And Björk, speaking on technology, I think this album definitely has sort of a computerized aesthetic. Even in like the music videos, the album covers, like
Yeah.
it's. I mean, it's easier to say that now because we're looking back, and it's very obviously like this Y2K aesthetic. Whereas back then, maybe it was kind of new. It wasn't maybe looked at that way. It's hard to really say. I wasn't even alive when this album came out. But there's like the music videos are like just these 3D sort of video game aesthetics, and like a lot of the
Yeah.
single covers have these sort of like 3D pre-renders that look like PS1 graphics. Like it's very Japanese. Like it's very like Tokyo Core, Y2K. It's very cool. And the production for this album is a lot bigger, I think, than debut. Just like a ton of guest composers and guest musicians, and it's just a lot bolder. And yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to say before we jump into the track list?
Yeah, tying into the track list, yeah, I remember seeing that Bjork described this album as like schizophrenic
Interesting.
because it had so many guest composers and
Yeah,
producers, and
there's a ton.
yeah, I feel like the album cover like really kind of captures that. It's this portrait shot of Bjork, and then behind her are just like all these, I don't even know what I would call them, like collages and like
It sort of
different.
reminds me of just a Tokyo street, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, with,
And
like, different vignettes of everything popping up left, right, and center, and it's almost like it is, in a way, kinda schizophrenic how many things are just going on, in the background, how many things are, like, I guess, in her mind, and she's got, like, this
mm.
pink halo behind her too, which is so interesting.
It's interesting. I always, it's funny. I always interpreted that as like a pink sun hat, but now that I'm looking at it, it is not a hat. It is sort of just a halo, huh? It's like something behind her, some sort of circle. That's
Yeah,
interesting. I'm actually
yeah,
looking at it right now for the first time, zoomed out, and it's just a bunch of paintings and stuff. I always actually thought it was just like kind of a blurred shot of Tokyo, but I think that's the vibe it's going for. And yeah, I mean, it's a cool aesthetic. It
very
honestly maybe
cool.
is like her best album cover. It's just so iconic. The production process is pretty interesting. They go to some pretty interesting locales to record a lot of this. There's a lot of songs like reworked from like years prior, like even pre-debut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like you said, it's very just all over the place.
Yeah,
But the one thing that stays consistent is it's very harsh and it's very in your face and it's much bolder, which is what she was going for than debut. And yeah, I
totally.
mean, do you want to jump into the first track, Army of Me, and give us
Let's
your
do
thoughts?
it. Yeah. I loved this opening.
Oh yeah,
Just like from the get-go with like the bass line and like the
it is
electronic
grimy.
production. Did you get the vibe that it was very much like you wouldn't steal a car,
Oh
would
yeah,
you?
I mean, have you seen? Well, it's funny. Have you seen the music video?
I
She's
haven't.
she's actually in a car. So she's like in this like a cyberpunk esque or cybertruck esque like industrial car. Like it's got these giant like sort of what are those big trucks? Those big trucks that play in the mud and shit and do flips. What is like a monster truck? It's like
Monster
these big
trucks.
monster truck wheels, and there's like bugs in the grill, and she's like driving through like a dystopian New York. Like it
That's
looks like New
nuts,
York in like
yeah.
20 years. It is awesome. There's just like pipes and tires. It's like Gotham in there. It's like Geiger, dude.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I get from
Yeah.
this song, and she did such an amazing job, and I feel like this song, there was this, like, horn stab that was it was, like, very, like, 90s hip hop, like, horn sample, and it would just, like, pop in from time to time, like, the entire album is so eclectic, but I feel like it was so fascinating to hear this 90s hip hop horn sample in this supposed like, coming from a pop artist,
Yeah. Well, it's art pop, it's artsy. I think that this is one of those songs that's reworked from an older song. Like this was originally going to be on debut like a couple years
mhm,
earlier, and she shelved it and then put it on this. I think because it would have stood out too much on debut, maybe too like abrasive at the time. And apparently this song was made in like the lyrics at least were and the singing were just done in like one day. Like she just knocked it out, which is pretty I think different than a lot of other tracks. I think she spends a little more time, but this one
yeah.
was just knocked out, and I think that you can actually feel that. Like it's more raw and brutal, and I think it adds to
Yeah.
that sort of industrial vibe that you were mentioning.
Yeah, I totally hear that. It does feel more raw and brutal, and I feel like maybe the reason why it just kind of, like, spilled out of her was because I looked into it, and apparently she had written this song for her brother,
Oh, really?
Yeah, and just the lyrical content is very much like, so for example, you're on your own now, we won't save you, your rescue squad is too exhausted. Stand up, you've got to manage, I won't sympathize anymore. The chorus is like, and if you complain once more, you'll meet an army of me. If you
Mm,
complain once more, you'll meet an army of me. I
yeah.
feel like she just kind of had these very pent up frustrations, which I feel like is normal for anyone to feel. Like, let's say I don't know, you've got someone in your life and you're giving them advice and you're trying to help them all the time and they're just like not taking anything. They're not like doing anything
Mm,
about it. I feel like it's very natural to have this response where it's like very much this song, just like almost like frustration and just like,
yeah.
I give up. I'm
Yeah,
not going to
so
help you anymore.
I like that interpretation. I definitely got the frustrating vibes. For me, the way I interpret it, or the way I kind of felt, is that this song is very much about sort of the grind of industrial capitalism, like capitalism in a city, like just getting fed up with the machine, you know? Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of intense pressure that you feel, you know, working a job. And I feel like it's just this anthem of escape, you know, like if you complain once more, you'll meet an army of it. It's like reaching a breaking point, you know, and
Yeah.
under the stress of work. And I actually really like, you pointed out this line too, but I really like the line, "We won't save you, your rescue squad is exhausted," because I feel like it's meaningful if you think about it in that context, because even the people meant to save you are also collapsing under the pressures of work and capitalism, and are also stressed. You know what I mean? They can't even
Yeah.
help you. Even the people that
Yeah.
are meant to help you can't help you. Like
Yeah.
it's this very just crushing song. And however you interpret it, it's definitely a song about you know, frustration and
Yeah.
stress.
I love quoting Kendrick, but it's very much like I choose me. I'm sorry. Like I can't do this anymore type vibe, which
Yeah.
the people pleasers need to hear this song.
Yeah, you need to, you know, get fed up and do your own thing sometimes, you know?
Totally. Yeah. Because I feel like this album, I have a lot to say later on, but I feel like this album is very much like she's just being very honest with expressing
100%.
herself. And like even with the next track, did you have more to say? Do you want to talk about Hyper
No,
Ballad?
we can move right into hyper ballad.
Let's do it. So I feel like Hyper Ballad, like another name we could call it is maybe like Me Time Ballad.
Mm. I like that. It's a very similar track in vibe.
Yeah, you ever see I loved the instrumental for this, by the way.
Oh yeah.
It was beautiful, it was hypnotic, there was this arp in the background.
Mhm.
Um, there was this, like, drum brush that was so just, like, perfectly placed and soft and, like, welcoming, but at the same time, it felt very, like, spacey. I
Mm.
just the instrumental for this, I adore. Um, but the lyrics, you know what this reminds me of? Have you ever seen the meme of the wolf ripping its shirt off? Or like the person transforming into a wolf and then ripping its shirt off? Like the really badly like drawn deviant art
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
That's what this kind of felt like to me. Because if we dive into it, so basically, I think the song tells the story of like Bjork and her lover like living on this beautiful mountain, whatever.
Yeah.
But then every morning, Bjork walks towards the edge of the mountain, and she's just like throwing things
I
off.
love that next line, like
Yeah,
car parts, bottles, and cutlery. That's like one of my favorite lines on the whole album,
yeah.
honestly. It's just very
Every
descriptive, very
It
specifically
is,
described.
yeah. Every morning, I walk towards the edge and throw little things off like car parts, bottles, and cutlery, or whatever I find lying around. It's become a habit, a way to start the day. And
Yeah.
then the reason I think this should be called the Me Time Ballad is because is because of the chorus. I go through all this before you wake up so I can feel happier to be safe up here with you. I feel like it's very much like it's almost like defeatist in a way where it's like
Mm.
I'm sorry, but I have to just like vent my anger and frustrations by myself because if I stay around you too long, I'm going to become the wolf ripping a shirt off.
Yeah. I
Um,
I definitely think that there's a one way to interpret this is definitely like a relationship for sure. My thinking is that this song is, you know, it's very depressing in a way, because I sort
mhm.
of interpret it as like the top of the mountain is a skyscraper. I don't think she's being literal when she says mountain. I feel like she's saying a skyscraper, and she's kind of in this like ivory tower. You know what I mean? And I sort of also get that impression when I see the music video, because it's another very like techno dystopian music video. Like her
Mhm.
face is like shifting between LCD screens. There's like flashing lights.
Yeah.
Um, and there's like her as like a video game character model, like running through like a city. It's a very cool music video. But you know, she's like throwing stuff off the mountain, car parts, bottles, cutlery. And I feel like it's almost like a sort of like a self guilt kind of thing. Like just, you know,
Yeah.
she's up in this high tower. They're very well off. They're like, for the most part, a positive couple, like on the outward facing perspective. But
Oh,
she
yeah.
feels kind of
Yeah, yeah,
guilt, and she's
yeah.
kind of throwing these things off the skyscraper. Like, I don't need this. I don't need this. I feel so
Totally.
guilty. And, you know, like this is around the time that she was gaining momentum, like getting more into the mainstream. And I just wonder if there's a little bit of guilt there for being sort of in like an upper class. But that's just one way to interpret it.
Yeah.
But I think that's a relatable
I love that. I
message.
love that interpretation, and it's so interesting you say she's feeling guilty because we can talk about this later in another track. She I did some digging. She said, "I actually feel guilty writing some of these lyrics," and we can
Yeah.
talk about why that is. But I feel like talking about the guilt that I'm picking up on too is like, oh, I'm like in this supposed relationship where I love this person, but yet every morning I still have to just like scream into a void.
Yeah.
Which is it is really sad to think about. It's almost like, oh, why can't this be enough for me sort of thing. Um and like in the second verse, it's like it's pretty chilling. She's like,
Oh yeah. The line.
yeah,
The line. I imagine what my body would sound like slamming against those rocks.
yeah, you ever hear of the call of the void?
Yeah.
Does she even want to be in this relationship?
Right. You can almost interpret it as maybe, you know, a relationship that isn't right for her or is right in some ways, but not right in others, which is also a theme in a lot of the songs that we're going to get to. I feel like
Yeah,
if I was reading correctly, if I remember correctly, you know, Björk was kind of dating a lot in the production of this album and, you know, was maybe going through different people and just feeling kind of
totally.
isolated, you know, not finding the right one. So there's
Yeah,
multiple ways you can interpret the lyrics here, which I think is like maybe why this song is so strong lyrically. uh,
absolutely.
you know, you can come up with a million different interpretations. It's just very good imagery on a lot of these lines.
I feel like a lot of the tension, I totally agree, by the way. I feel like a lot of the tension that comes from these songs too, speaking of like, dating people during the process of this album,
Mm.
she was like romantically involved with some of the collaborators on this
Yeah,
album
she
too.
was.
Which I mean, it's kind of like, same hat as like Fleetwood Mac. Like
I don't know much
imagine
about Fleetwood Mac, but explain.
basically Rumors is an album about basically the band was like dating itself. There was
Mm,
the relationship between so I think it was between Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks,
mm,
and they wrote this album and performed this album while they were going through a breakup,
interesting.
and Rumors was like the product of that. um, so I imagine, I don't know the ins and outs of Bjork's relationships, but I mean, you can imagine there's going to be some tension working with people that you're romantically involved with, and then perhaps
Mm.
not feeling the right fit with.
Yeah, and I think you know we've kind of been remiss to talk about just the vocals in general of Bjork, which I think are very very good in this song. Like just the growls, like the deeper registers, like the voice cracks. Like it's just there's
Yeah,
just Björk has expression of voice that I think no one even comes close to replicating or paralleling. Like it's just it's unparagoned. You know what I mean? Like it's just so
yeah,
she's not afraid to push her voice to the limits, like let it get hoarse and like peter out in anguish, and
yeah,
that's the kind of vocalist that just really capture my attention, I guess, in general. I mean, it makes sense, you know, I'm like into like Kurt Cobain and like MC Ride and stuff. Like people that are just like pushing their vocals to the limit is very interesting to me. You know, like if
yeah,
she was just getting on these tracks and singing them very prettily, perfectly, hitting every note and just doing kind of a normal style, I mean, it would not be anywhere near as good. Like I think those
absolutely.
vocals are 100% pushing. It's like the main instrument of every Björk song, pretty much, is
I
her vocals.
totally agree. Like her voice is so interesting, and in both of these tracks, she's like singing with like on the verge of shouting, but it's not shouting. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
she slips into this like guttural. That sounds bad. She slips into this
No,
very
it's
like
guttural.
yeah
That's a good way
yeah
to put it.
like this very like earthy like primal like
It's primal.
it reminds me of The Northman, the movie that she was in. It's very like there's this scene in the movie where the Vikings are like getting into the headspace of being a wolf or something.
Mm,
So they're all like growling around a fire and just letting out all these very instinctive emotions, and
yeah.
that's what this feels. It feels this album feels like she's channeling a volcano.
Is there a volcano in Iceland? There might
Oh
be.
yeah, tons, tons,
Tons, yeah. She
tons.
probably maybe she recorded this one in a volcano. You never know.
Maybe, yeah.
There actually are some really interesting production choices later down the line that we can get into in this album. But yeah, I mean,
Totally.
I love primal vocals, primal music. I think music is at its best when it's very primal and expressive to me. And Björk is one with nature. And this next track, are you cool to head into it? It's also
Let's
kind
do
of,
it, yeah.
I think moving into the modern things makes me like again look at sort of like the anti-capitalistic tendencies in like these previous songs. I
Mhm.
feel like after this song, that theme kind of goes to the wayside a little bit. Like it kind of comes in and out, and it becomes more about like love and romance and relationships. But I
Mhm.
still feel like this song is sort of like the end to like this 3-track run that is very much about the workplace relationship, in my opinion. Like I feel like this song is
Yeah.
again like kind of about the guilt of being in these large skyscrapers, like having these modern things, modern inventions and objects like cars. But I think she's kind of saying that all of these things are just like a part of nature. Like as much as we look at these
Yeah.
things like inventions as these like new things that we created, it really is just molding nature into different things. A Tesla
Absolutely.
is just nature at the end of the day. And so I
Totally,
think it's
yeah.
this really cool song about the sort of cycle of nature. And, eventually all this shit, most likely, is just going to get piled over with vines and nature, and it's just going to start over again. You know what I mean? Some of the Icelandic lyrics also have like more themes of sort of like a despondent view on this. Like the sun sets and no one pays attention to us is actually one of the Icelandic lyrics translated into English. We're just on a floating rock.
We're just on a floating rock. I felt like, this was one of the catchiest choruses on the album, in my
Oh yeah.
opinion, the Icelandic.
Yeah.
The jazz drums took me completely off guard. That was such a interesting choice, um, in the best way possible. And
Mhm.
I also completely agree with you, like feeling the of oh, a Tesla is just from nature. I hear people say all the time, like, this thing is so unnatural, but
Mhm.
really if it's on Earth, it has to be natural because
Yeah.
it's made from minerals and dirt and rocks and grass. People are made from minerals and dirt and rocks and grass and water and meat.
Yeah.
And
Meat. That's such a that's a raw way of saying it. I like that.
yeah, well, this is a very raw song.
It is.
One thing that I really like, I want to hear your thoughts on this. One of my favorite OSTs of all time is from the anime Zankyo no Terror.
I remember like when we became friends, I was around that time I was very into Sonic Terror, but it had also come out, so we were probably both newly
Yeah,
watching it. That album is very good. That's produced by Yoko Kanno,
yeah,
who also did the amazing soundtrack for Cowboy Bebop, which is maybe like one of the most famous soundtracks in anime ever.
yeah.
Zanki no Terror is very Björk core, so I kind of get what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
the vocals are very expressive and all over the place and very emotional and raw.
I'm glad you
Um,
picked up on that because I felt like Yoko Kanno did take inspiration from this song in particular
Interesting. Yeah,
for
maybe.
some of the soundtrack. And what's cool is like the characters are listening to the soundtrack as if it exists in the world of Zankyo no Terror, like they're on their
Mhm.
MP3s listening
Yeah.
to it or
That
whatever.
is really funny.
Um, and then one of the characters is like, "Oh, where's this music from?" And then one of the characters is like, "Oh, it's from a far off land." And
Interesting.
it's from like Iceland. It's
You
Icelandic.
think it's straight up Björk reference. I
I
gotta go and listen back to
honestly,
it. Yeah, you're probably right.
Like honestly, maybe because some of the themes of that anime are also very much like
Oh, 100%. Cycle, rebirth, return to nature,
yeah,
anarchistic, just blow things up. Let's return back.
yeah.
Yeah, I that's actually very interesting. I gotta go and listen back to the Zanki no Terra OST now.
You might pick up some Bjork influence. I don't
I mean,
know.
that's probably why I liked it so much at the time. I mean,
Maybe.
it's similar, right?
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and listen to it to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, did you have anything else to say about this one or?
Not really. It's just an amazing song, man. Like the vocals are again sick, the instrumental's sick. Everything's just sick. Björk's
Yeah.
killing it.
Yeah, this song was great. So I did some digging about It's So Quiet, which is the
It's
next one
oh
that
so quiet.
it's oh so quiet. So apparently this is a cover song.
It's a cover from a song by Betty Hutton from 1951. I've never heard the original. In fact, I probably should have listened to it before
I took a look at the
recording.
original.
You did? You did?
Yeah. So this is a B-side to the single Murder He Says, which I
It's so
like
1950s core.
it is, but also I feel like Bjork channels some of that energy
Oh,
on this
100. Dude,
album.
she sounds retro as fuck on this.
Yeah. So it turns out the cover is like completely faithful. Like when I was listening back, I was like, this is such a faithful cover. It
I could
almost
see
feels
that.
like just paying homage. But what's cool about that is like instead of Bjork, like because she's, normally this very like forward thinking uh like boundary pushing artist, instead she's being
Mm.
like very faithful to the song. So it
Which is
almost
almost boundary pushing in and of itself, right?
yeah,
It's like,
but
this is not what you would expect me to do. Let me cover a
exactly.
song Faithful from 1951. Yeah.
Exactly. And then it's also like, hey, check out this amazing artist from the 50s who
I
was
do like
boundary
that.
pushing in her own right, because it's like I don't even need to do anything. Cuz okay, so this song is so cool. There's like this really quiet intro, right? Where
Mm,
because the whole song is about the peacetime in between loving someone. So
mm.
you're not loving anyone, it's peaceful, you're just by yourself, like you don't have to stress, you don't have to worry. And then when it's like, "Oh, oops, I've fallen in love."
And
Bjork
then it's
just
boom, and then it's super
yeah.
loud.
Yeah, then Bjork just literally screams, "Wow, bam."
Yeah, dude, her screams in the song are really awesome.
Yeah, and this is all stuff that Betty Hutton was doing in 1951. Like she was
That's
playing
sick.
with these dynamics. I just like even the lyrics from like Murder He Says were so interesting also. It's
Mm.
basically a song about falling in love with a guy and then he starts talking to her more and then she's like, "Oh, actually he kind of sucks. Like I want to kill him."
Yeah, I'm glad that that you took a liking to this one. I'll admit that like I don't listen to this one very much because it does very much like stand out in the context of the album, which is probably its point, right? It's like I just gave you three epic bangers. Let me have some fun now, and do this song. And so I don't
Yeah,
really play it as much, but like it was fun. Like it's a fun interlude in the album before we go back into sort of the themes that we were talking about. But the themes also, like the themes of romance here are pretty integral to the album, and I think the songs post "It's So Quiet" on Post are all about romance, and so this is sort of opening up more into that. So it makes sense
yeah,
to like in the broader context of the album.
totally. I love how like unapologetically expressive she is.
Mm.
And I'll talk more about like why that makes me very like proud of her too. But I love how she's like actually just like screaming at the top of
Oh
her
yeah,
lungs,
there's
like
there's one scream in this where it's just like ah, just like all the
yeah,
way.
it's actually just it's phenomenal. And I just think it's a very fun song. But I don't know if I have too much more to say on it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say is it has a pretty cool music video directed by Spike Jonze. Almost every song on this album has a music video, which is really funny. Like,
That's
I don't think
cool.
I've ever seen a. You don't see very many albums that have that many music videos. I like
No.
watching the music videos when an artist has them because I feel like it gives you a little more context to what maybe they intended. It's literally just like a very classic, just like dancing around in a laundromat. It's a fun music video.
I love
But
that. I
yeah,
actually love the idea of dancing in a laundromat.
yeah,
Have
it's
you
just like it's a fun vibe.
have you ever seen Baby Driver?
Yeah, I have seen Baby Driver. Is that directed by Spike Jonze?
It's by the guy who did Hot Fuzz.
Oh, okay.
Let me look this
Edgar
up.
Wright.
Edgar Wright, thanks. Yeah. The idea of dancing in a laundromat is very romantic. And I think, like, even in Baby Driver, I mean, right? They play up the romance of these main characters by having them dance in a
Well, a
laundromat.
laundromat is sort of an oddly romantic spot to be because while it doesn't represent like a romantic getting together and eating, fancy food, it's sort of a place where you're often at. A lot of people are often at the laundromat, and so it has this sort of simple vibe where it's just like, you can
Yeah,
just imagine like late night, you're with your partner just at the laundromat, and there's some romance in that of itself, right? You're just spending time together at a place that you wouldn't normally describe as a romantic locale. I think it's
totally.
it's a nice spot. I love
Absolutely.
laundromats, dude. I like just like I used to as a kid just like watch the laundromats spin, like the little washers.
Yeah. No, they are such a vibe. They are
Well, you
such
want
a
to move
vibe.
into the fifth track? Enjoy.
Yeah. I I thought this might have been one of my favorites on the album, to be
I agree,
honest.
actually. Yeah.
I feel like the chord progression was so ahead of its time. Uh, I was listening to it, and the first thing I thought of was, have you heard of this song, Claire de Lune by Flight Facilities?
No, actually.
It's like this electronic track that was produced in the tens, and I just thought the chord progression was like very ahead of its time for
Yeah, the
95.
beat is nasty. Like it's
It's
it's good.
gnarly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like this one is like has sort of the techno dystopian vibes of kind of the early three tracks, but is obviously more about love. And I feel like it's describing like a dirty love, like a hedonistic approach to dating that is almost sort of
Mm,
like ahead of its time, because now you look at like the landscape of relationships in 2024. By the way, 2024 now, holy cow. But
Happy New Year,
relationships,
everyone.
yeah, happy new year. Relationships and love are very transactional sometimes, and they can feel that way, especially like with the advent of all these apps and stuff. Like I can imagine this is the perfect soundtrack to like any dating app experience.
I was getting that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
she's almost like, again, it's very much like I choose me, I'm sorry, but also like a very isolated kind of,
Yeah.
like an isolated selfishness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
It
the lines are very stark. Like the this is sex without touching, like it just shows how vapid human love can be, like we just move through people and live lives
Yeah.
and there's no intimacy, like just
Yeah.
insipid relationships. We all live like this due to like just like the churn of man.
Well, I also interpret it as like she wants deep inside of her to like have this be love for love's sake, but there's
Mm.
just these feelings she can't get rid of in the pit of her stomach.
Mm.
But it's like that's what makes this song so like crushing in a way, is like she's like, "Ah, like I wish I want to stay here." These are the lyrics. "I wish I want to stay here. I wish this be enough. I wish I only love you. I wish simplicity."
Right.
Um I wish I had, but then, imagine like a family having dinner for like Christmas or something. And instead of participating in the dinner, you're looking in from a window. She's like, so in the lyrics, "I wish I'd only look and didn't have to touch. I wish I'd only smell this and didn't have to taste." She's like trying to dip her toes in the water of
Right,
this
like she
love.
wants it to be a movie. Like she wants it to be like a hedonistic, just like I have the enjoyment aspects of it, but not the whole relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I think lyrically it's pretty interesting because
It's pretty fun.
there's so many ways you can take it. It could be like, yeah, I want it to be, I just want this like this hedonistic thing, but it also could be like, I'm like kind of curious about what it could be like if it was actually just love. Like I
Yeah.
want to experience that, but also like I want to just think of myself here and I want to be selfish, and like, but then there's this like awesome saxophone that comes in at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah.
That was really interesting to
I
me.
just love the chorus too. I just love how it gets really loud and she's just screaming in joy. It's just good.
Yeah, this was a great song, probably one of my favorites on the
It's up
album.
there for sure.
Yeah. Um, did you have any other thoughts on it?
No, let's move into You've Been Flirting Again. We're about halfway through the album, a little over halfway. This is the
Yeah,
sixth track. This song
yeah,
is literally just about how flirting, love can be messy. Words can be kind of messy, intentions can be hard to understand, and I feel like this song is sort of about that ambiguity, right? It's a very simple song and it's short, but I think it's powerful.
Yeah, I was very moved by this song. It was
It's
very
very
like
beautiful.
it was very emotional. There's like this very comforting, sweet string section, which to me, I feel like was intentional on Björk's part. She's trying to portray this sense of like comfort to someone that she has let down. Um,
Mm,
it's so let's take a look at these lyrics. All that she said was true. All that she said was true. Give her some time, give her some space. All that she said was true, right? So this is talking about how like the flirting, like she really meant all these things that she was saying, like, oh, like um compliments she paid this person, all of that. She really meant it.
mm,
And in the second verse, she's talking about how her intentions are good. All that she meant was good. All that she meant was good. Give her some time, give her some space. All that she meant was good. She's like, I really didn't want to hurt you. My
right.
intentions were good. I really did care about you. And then in the third verse, she's like, how you reacted was right. How you reacted was right. Give her some time, give her some space. How you reacted was right. So it
Yeah.
almost feels like she's taking accountability for like
It's
being in the
mature.
wrong here. Yeah, she's like, okay, everything I said was true. I had the best intentions and you were totally right to think that I was sending you these signals.
Yeah, and you're
Um
totally right to be upset, you know.
you're totally right to be upset, and that's why she's offering this, like it's sung in this very comforting way. It's got these very comforting strings. Yeah, but she still pulls away, like she couldn't go through with this person, whoever it was.
And yeah, and
Um,
that's how things go sometimes, and I feel like this is a very mature look at it, right? Like a lot of people, especially like a celebrity or something, wouldn't give a shit at all, you know. But Björk feels empathy, right? She's writing a song about it on a major album. Like
yeah,
it's just it's a mature track
totally.
lyrically.
It's very much like, hey, I'm sorry that I did this to you, but I've got to go. I can't do this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's natural too. Like love is like that a lot, especially when you're just dating, you know. Sometimes things feel really good for a bit and then they don't, you know, and it's natural. It's like not really anyone's fault, but it's totally valid for how everyone feels, you know. It's like a stressful time.
Definitely. The whole give her some time, give her some space. I think it just ties into this sense of isolation that Bjork is feeling throughout this album.
Mm,
Like I get the impression that she's really trying to love people and give people her love at this
right.
point at least, but she's like, "You know what? I just need my space." And we can get into is it the next song?
Well, yeah, the next song
Uh,
is sort of
y-
about the isolation in nature a little bit,
yeah. Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
yeah, I feel like this track's very fun. I feel like this just like describes the nature of man, right? Like it's kind of a revolt to the earlier themes of the industrial, and it's just full in like it's just like a girl like running through the forest, and like just if you watch the music videos, it's that way too. It's just like a girl or Bjork, I forget, just running through the forest. There's mushrooms, and
Yeah.
it's very fun. And this song's very orchestral. The lyrics are very like innocent, you know.
Yeah.
um, and I think it also describes that cycle that I was talking about earlier, like this sort of quick evolution of humanity, right?
Yeah.
And also the breakdown. Like this is what humanity looked like before the industrialization, and this might be what it looks like after everything gets torn down, as the grass and the plants just retake all of the industrial things that we know today.
I totally
Like
agree.
in a tower of steel, nature forges a deal to raise wonderful hell like me, like me. I don't know. I love when the sounds get louder, like halfway
Yeah.
through the song. And in the music video, there's like shots of airplanes and like
Yeah.
war, cities like forging where nature once stood, and light bulbs and just inventions, and it's just to show like nature, is just this cycle, and things move quickly, and there's horrible things, and there's great things, and
Yeah.
that's the cyclical nature of it. But I'm curious to hear your interpretation of the song.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on everything you said. Like, for example, I feel like the percussion references being in a forest. It's
Mm.
very like wooden and
Oh, interesting. I didn't really
very
pick up on
like
that.
organic. Yeah. Um the lyrics also, talking about like I'm married to myself, and also the single cover for this is Bjork hugging Bjork.
Yeah, it's two Björks. Double
Yeah.
Björk.
and they both look very affectionate, and they're
You gotta love yourself before you love another.
yeah, she's I feel like she's very much like in her own kind of world, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
And at the time, she was in London. She was in the UK. Like she had sort of escaped Iceland after debut, and
Yeah.
she was roaming around, just meeting all these different producers and going to different clubs. And obviously, some dating and some romance comes up. You're young, and so this is very much just like an album about that, and you're seeing that, right? It's like nothing is really quite sticking. Like there are these great moments and there are these horrible moments with this love, and it's confusing. But at the end of the day, I have myself and I have
Yeah,
nature, and that's what Isabel is about.
which is great. Yeah. I did some digging into Isabel too. Um I feel like Bjork is very good at committing to the bit because she wrote she
Did she
wrote
write this in the forest?
no, I don't know if she did, but what I
Okay.
learned was that she wrote an entire book of lyrics that
Wow.
she wanted to throw it away because she was feeling like none of the lyrics she was writing like really captured what she was trying to go for, but she wrote an entire book of lyrics, and she reached out to her friend, I forget his name, but he was a writer, an Icelandic writer, and they worked on it together,
Hmm.
which I think is cool. And I get this very like fairy tale vibe
Oh,
from this
100%. It's very
song.
fantasy, fantastical.
Yeah, so it makes total sense. She was like, "I'm gonna write a book of lyrics for
Yeah.
this like very fairy tale esque song."
That's funny. I would not be surprised if some of the vocals were actually recorded in a forest. There are some later songs on this that I'll get into that have some pretty funny production methods. But like she was like
Totally.
going around like actually recording in different places, like not just in a studio. She
Yeah.
was getting a little avant-garde with where the locales of where she would perform her vocals. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, 100%. I got that too. Um, do you wanna talk about Possibly Maybe?
Yeah, one of my favorite songs.
Same. I feel like this song is like the crown jewel of this album for just a number of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, like Hyper Ballad is an amazing song. It's like the single that you listen to all the time.
Yeah.
But possibly maybe is very very good. I agree. It might be my favorite on the album.
Yeah, I just feel like it ties everything in thematically, sonically, like, I just feel like it is the piece de resistance for this album.
I
Uh,
agree. It's like to me it's like the personification of the flirting. Like I really like just
yeah,
like the opening line, "Your flirts, it finds me out, teases the crack in me." I
yeah,
like that wordplay, but it's playful. It's like Björk being flirted with and Björk flirting and considering this relationship, and she's on the edge and she can't quite decide, but she's leaning towards yes, and sometimes she's leaning towards no, and it's just they're just really fun. It's just it's a fun and and mature track as well.
I completely agree, it was fun, but then there was a bait and switch moment for me.
Y- Yeah.
Yeah, so, this instrumental is like this cool, like, comforting, like, trip hop track,
Hmm.
and,
I love the instrumental. So
the
good.
instrumental is great, and also something cool about the instrumental, it changes keys during the chorus when she's like, "Oh, possibly, maybe," what does she say? "Possibly, maybe,
She just
this
says
is love," or
possibly maybe
something?
a bunch, I think. Oh yeah. Later she says, yeah, she mostly just says possibly maybe in the
Yeah,
chorus.
"Possibly, maybe, probably love, possibly, maybe, probably love," or, "Probably, maybe, possibly love, this is probably, maybe, possibly love, possibly." So
Yeah.
she's, like, toying with the idea that she has fallen in love with this person.
Right.
There's like these lyrics as much as I so this is what I mean. It's like this is like the culmination of her solitude and like maybe letting someone in.
Hmm.
Um as much as I definitely enjoy solitude, I wouldn't mind perhaps spending a little time with you sometimes. Um and later on, I feel like she she like gets burned for letting this person in
Yeah, it
because
does progress over time. Um,
yeah.
I want to point out just the verse 3 because I've we
Oh yeah,
skipped
yeah,
over.
yeah. Yeah.
Verse 3 is it's just really funny to me. Like I think that was maybe I don't know like unintentionally funny, but
Yeah.
like just like uncertainty excites me, baby. Who knows what's going to happen? Lottery or car crash, or you'll join a cult. Like I
Yeah.
always kind of laugh at that line because it's like unintentionally just kind of funny. It's kind of
No, it
whimsical,
it
but
is funny, yeah,
yeah,
like, she is funny, and I feel like this song is it's, like, referencing, like, uh, you don't know what's gonna happen when you fall in love with someone. It is a lottery ticket, right? Like,
yeah,
it could end amazingly, or it could, you could get really hurt. Um, and unfortunately, in this song, Bjork does get hurt. This person who has been
hmm
very isolated, who has had trouble letting people in, who has been watching through the glass, she finally lets someone in. She's like, "Oh, probably, maybe, possibly, possibly this is love." And then we get to like verse
verse 5,
5
yeah,
and verse 6. Electric shocks, I love them with you, dozen a day. But after a while, I wonder, where's that love you promised me? Where is it?
yeah,
Verse 6, how can you offer me love like that? My heart's burned. How can you offer me love like that? I'm exhausted. Leave me alone. Which is
yeah.
just so fucking sad.
But then she comes back in the final verse, and there's a little bit of sort of optimism at the end where she's kind of moved on, and she's like, "Since we broke up, I'm using lipstick again." I like that. That's kind of slay.
I think, yeah, I think that's pretty great. She's just doing what she wants again. But there's also like this lament, like, I suck my tongue in remembrance of you.
Yeah, that's fair. You could have definitely interpreted it as sort of a lament as well.
Yeah, but I think this is more supposed to be like comedic. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
yeah,
very the song to me, like with the instrumental, like feels very still. Like it
yeah,
feels like it captures like the limbo of thought. Like this limbo
yeah,
of decision making after a day is over, you're laying in bed
yeah.
and you're thinking, you're recapping, you're analyzing.
Oh,
And it's just that
absolutely.
it's that limbo or like the limbo you feel like late at night you're laying in bed or even like when you wake up in the morning. Like it's just she doesn't really know what she wants and she has this relationship
Yeah,
and she gets kind of burnt and it's just she doesn't really know how to feel about it for most of the song. And I feel like again, it's just relatable. I mean, I'm not really in the dating scene, but it can be like that. It can
yeah.
be like that.
It's super relatable. I also did do some digging here. Um, so Bjork describes this as her first dark song.
Interesting.
Yeah, so she was talking about her life. She was saying she was brought up to be self-reliant and self-sufficient and like hyper independent.
Mm,
So she was like brought up to just rely solely on herself, to be happy and never complain. So she's basically in this state of like, I just have to be there for myself. And maybe that's why, she has such a hard time connecting with people or letting people in for love. But
mm.
the reason she considers this to be her first dark song is because apparently writing it made her feel ashamed. And
Interesting.
yeah, and in this song, she is basically like, she's not being positive. She's just expressing herself, right?
Right.
Um, but I mean, that's why I feel so proud of her. If that feels weird to say, can I be proud of Bjork?
You can be proud of Björk.
I'm gonna be proud of Bjork because she decided to just express herself in this album. She just let it out, which I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
So
And this is sort of her really first jump into that sort of like real expression and really expressing herself. And I feel like the albums to come after Post are like where she really just like goes all out. Like this is sort of her like that's interesting that she calls this her first dark song
yeah,
because it's true like this is her first walk into the abyss and these next couple albums which hopefully we review on our podcast at some point down the line in the future um are just even more that way and like Post is awesome but the two albums that come after Post are like some of my favorite albums of all time and it's
we'll have
because
to get to it
yeah
then.
we'll have to get to it but
Yeah.
it's because she gets more expressive and explores more of herself and her true self I do I pick up on that a little bit on this song it's interesting that she describes that as her first dark song because I mean I see a lot of the songs on this album have had dark themes
Yeah.
um
It's
that's,
interesting,
that's
right?
interesting yeah
Yeah. But yeah, so I feel like this song is such an important moment on this album and
yeah
maybe in her
it's
career.
one of the best ever from Björk.
Yeah. Um, do you want to talk about I Miss You?
Track 9 I Miss You.
I feel like this one was kind of like the the palate cleanser to like just
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like let's take a deep breath, let's unload a bit. Like things have
yeah.
been pretty heavy.
Well, have you have you seen the music video? It's very much that way too. Like
No,
it's
I
like
haven't.
it's directed by John Kay, who is like apparently kind of a piece of shit, but he's the guy that made like Ren and Stimpy. And
Oh,
although I don't
okay.
like the guy, like the music video is like it's a cool aesthetic. But it's like
That's awesome.
cartoon. And it's very silly and just yeah, fun. There's like it's a simple fast beat. Björk's fun on it. I actually really like this track, honestly. But it is definitely like a palette cleanser for sure. What
Yeah.
did you think about like the lyric content?
Lyrically, I felt it was lighthearted, or she's like after being burned by this previous love, she's like letting herself dream again,
Mm,
missing this person she has never met and imagining how they might fit into her life and how they might be as a person, which I feel like is a very common experience for people.
yeah.
Oh, I wonder who's out there for me and I wonder what they're like.
Right. Just yeah, this song is definitely just about searching for love. It's pretty simple in its theme, but like you said, it's sort of a reprieve. It's a break from
Yeah.
all the darker themes. I mean,
Yeah.
apparently Björk's darkest song at the time. You need a little break, you know?
Yeah, and
Um,
I think also like the silver lining, or optimistically speaking, like considering on all the previous songs she had been so isolated, it's now she's like, "Oh, I wonder who's out there for me." It's kinda like opening herself up, which I
yeah,
guess
she's
is a
able to kind
win,
of move on.
right?
Yeah, it's a W, right?
It's a dub.
This one production wise is interesting. I read a little bit, and she apparently says that this is the track on the album that underwent the most amount of change, which is really
Mm,
interesting. Like
yeah.
apparently, this is another track from the debut era, but it just had like a very chaotic production. Like a ton of people worked on this and like changed it, and like apparently it sounds like nothing like it did in the beginning. Like one of the Sugar Cubes guys played some trumpet on it. You know, like there's
That's
some
so
sax.
interesting. Yeah.
There's like co-production credits to a bunch of different people, like Howie Bernstein, who produced for like U2 and Susie and the Banshees. There's
That's
just like a lot.
interesting.
It's weird that this song like took the longest to make. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
especially when it is more of like a simple kinda just love
yeah,
song.
but it's good. It's
It
good.
is
It's
good.
fun.
I loved the percussions, like, it sounded like it was coming from a drum machine. It sounded
Mm,
very synthetic,
I love her
very
percussion in
yeah,
her late '90s and early 2000s albums. It's just so good.
it is amazing, and I also loved when her vocals peaked. Like, there was this moment in the song later on, I think her vocals start peaking, and I was like
I actually didn't notice that.
yeah, no, it was great. It was like she's just singing her heart out. I was like, "That's
Yeah,
awesome." Yeah,
she's going all out. Um,
absolutely.
we move into Cover Me,
Yeah,
number 10, and this song is one of the ones that I had something to say with the production.
let's
This
hear it.
song feels very open and claustrophobic at the same time, right?
Mm,
And you want to
mhm.
know why?
Why?
It was literally recorded in a cave. It
That's
was
so
recorded
funny.
in a bat-filled cave in the Bahamas, and if you know that going in, you can hear the fucking bats.
That is so interesting. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it has this very like mystery vibe. Like you feel kind of lost. You know, like you're
Yeah,
moving through the cave. It's kind of like an adventure into the darkness. It's like not a song that I listen to very much. Like I'm gonna
yeah,
be honest. It might have been like the third or fourth time that I'd actually even listened to this, and I've listened to a lot of these songs like literally hundreds of times. So
yeah.
I don't really listen to this one a lot, but you know, obviously we were reviewing the album, so I wanted to listen to every track again. But I kinda liked it, you know, after, like, in the
That's
context of the
so
album,
funny.
but
I feel
yeah, it was
like
recorded in a cave, dude,
I
it's
feel like that adds so much to the title, "Cover Me."
yeah.
Like, she's literally being covered. Well,
Yeah,
what's so I also did some digging. I didn't hear about the cave thing.
interesting.
I learned that this song was, like, kind of a thank you letter to the producer of
It
Debut.
yeah, it is a little
Yeah.
bit.
So the way I interpreted it was "Hey, cover me. I'm going into battle," kind of, because she was, like,
Oh.
saying in an interview that, like, her album making process is, like, dangerous, and I guess that makes sense if she's going into bat-filled caves. But,
It's an
so
adventure.
it's an adventure, so yeah, it's almost like a thank you to her, producer who is, like, putting up with her dangerous album making methods.
Yeah, that's
Um,
very fun, that's
I
very
thought that
fun.
was very sweet of her. I get the impression that Bjork is just a very, like, sweet, empathetic, considerate person,
Oh,
honestly.
100%. She's based.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, I don't have much else to say about that one. This is a
Yeah,
pretty short track.
it's a short track, and lyrically, it's pretty simple. You know, there's not much to chew on here. She's just sort of, it's about adventure, crawling into the unknown. You could kind of interpret it as like kind of boundary pushing in a way, but I don't know if she's trying to be self congratulatory like that necessarily.
Yeah,
I think it's just a very just mystical song, just diving into the cave.
I
It's
agree.
fun. And then we hit the 11th track, Headphones, which is just a ballad of love. Again,
I love this
uh,
song so
sort
much.
of like a tribute to music, a tribute to production, a tribute to sound. Apparently, it was dedicated to one of Björk's friends, which is sweet. A lot of these
That's
songs are
very
dedicated to
sweet.
people.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just very nice in the ears, like beats bouncing from one ear to the other. Like it feels
It
very ping
it
pongy.
sounded like ASMR.
It's ASMR in music form. And
Yeah,
it's about resonance, it's about sound. Like it's a tribute to what sound can do, how fun sound can be. Like sometimes Björk is singing over there, sometimes she's over here. Sometimes
yeah,
she's 95% panned to the right in your headphones, like in the bag, or to the
yeah.
left. Like it's bustling with joy. Sometimes she's whispering. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's sad. It's just like this very dynamic track, and it doesn't like feel long, despite it being. I,
No,
I think it's the longest track on this album. It's like 6 minutes, but it doesn't drag. It doesn't waste your time. Like it's just
not
fun.
one bit.
It doesn't feel repetitive. It is a really good track.
I also think I completely agree with everything you said. It's very inventive, it's very creative, it's very much just, you know what, I'm gonna have some fun here, kind of.
Yeah,
I also feel like it's so ahead of its time in terms of some of the lyrical content. Like this,
interesting. I didn't look
it
much into lyrics on this song. I'm not gonna lie.
so for example, like Genius to Fall Asleep to Your Tape Last Night, she's literally talking about someone making a mixtape for her,
Mm,
and it is bringing her comfort and she's falling asleep to it. And it's almost like, you know, you hear about today, it's like, oh, my love language is like making playlists for people.
mm.
This to me is like, oh, my love language is listening to the mixtapes you send me. Um, I just like my headphones, they saved my life. Your tape lulled me to sleep, to sleep, to sleep.
Yeah, it's a tribute to the romance of music. You know.
Yeah. Bjork is kind of a lover girl, is the is the
This is
vibe.
this is basically as if she's writing a song about it being in a relationship with music. Like this whole time, like it's like about people. This one is just like music is my true love. Like,
Yeah.
these relationships aren't working out right now. I'm learning a lot. I'm indecisive. I don't know what I want. My heart's broken. I'm breaking hearts. But at the end of the day, I have music. And
Yeah.
that's my one true love. And that's very relatable to me. I'm sure it is to you. Like music
Yeah.
at the end of the day is our comfort. And for a lot of musicians, like it is that comfort. It is, I mean, as you described in our episode 0, your one true love, your first love. Like music is a love language. And
Yeah.
this headphones is just how you end an album correctly, in my opinion. Like this is a very good album closer.
I love album closers that feel like you're closing a chapter.
Yeah.
It's like it wraps everything in a nice bow. It's not over the top. We're here. We've arrived at our destination. Let's take a breath. It feels like closure.
Yeah.
Um,
And
music
I
is a love language.
Yeah, and I feel like she's just expressing that. It's like a self-expression of sound. It just feels so good when you're listening to it. It's like sound through the muscles and just cells moving around. It's just like appreciation
Yeah.
of her headphones and music and what it's done for her.
Yeah.
Music as a soundtrack for love, emotion. It's sweet.
It is sweet. I mean, one of the sweetest things I think anyone can do for anyone is making a playlist for them. Like, would you
Yeah.
agree? Like,
I love that shit.
have you ever like gotten a playlist from someone that you really care about and you're like, you know what? I fucking love you. This is the best thing in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I always love listening to new music. I mean, that's part of why we're making this podcast.
Yeah.
Hopefully to listen to a lot of new stuff. Well, had you ever listened to Post? I didn't even know if we talked about that. Was this your
No,
first time
this
listening?
was my first listen.
That's so cool.
Um, yeah, it was my first listen. I really just took it in, let it wash over me. I thought it was an amazing listen. Thank you so much for suggesting it for our little music book club here.
Yeah,
I thought it was an amazing experience. I thought it was an amazing album. Um, very ahead of its time. Like it's hard to think it's 30 years old at this point.
it's pretty crazy.
I think at some points it starts to show its age in the production, but that's to be expected of a 30-year-old album.
Yeah,
And musically, some of the ideas here are still just as fresh despite that.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, critics at the time saw this as boundary pushing. You know, it wasn't just pop. Like a lot of people were very just in awe, like gawking at some of the production choices here. And I think it stood the test of time mostly. You know, like you said, like it ages a little bit. But what's interesting is
yeah,
like this
what
is
doesn't,
also
right?
yeah. What's interesting is this is Björk's like also like her kind of in my opinion, her last hurrah in more of like a mainstream pop sound
Mm,
because there's like an edge to Post. It's a little, it has a little more of an edge from debut, but like Homogenic and Vespertine, which come next, are like where she really comes into her own. I sound like Patrick Bateman, but like really like this is just the beginning. Like her boldest music is yet to come. So if anyone listening to this or you, Alex, you know, really like this album, I think definitely move on to Homogenic and Vespertine because those are even better. Like it pushes this like even further beyond. But this is still an amazing album. Like my critiques are very short. Like I maybe wish like there was a little more oomph at the end. Like, you know, like I said, like I'm not gonna listen to Cover Me very often.
hmm
I
Yeah.
might not listen to that fourth track that's sort of that cover song as much, but they're still good in the context of the album. Maybe I wish she explored like more of the industrial themes a little bit, but it's a just a good album. It's a top 5 Björk. And yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to say about it?
Yeah, agreed. My criticism is very limited. I don't know. I agree. I think maybe a couple songs could have had a bit more like zest to them. Cover Me was great, and the sentiment is very sweet. But I think to me, just its placement in the album, it could have maybe been more effective if it was earlier on as like an
Mm.
interlude. But then it would have, yeah, it could have messed up some of the flow. So I think overall I don't have too much critique.
What would you give it out of 5?
I think I would feel comfortable giving it like a 4.5.
Yeah. One day we're gonna disagree, but that's
Yeah.
also what I gave it, a 4.5 out of 5. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean you just have to appreciate it for like I don't know. You have to appreciate it for being so ahead of its time. Um
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Great album. Hopefully we'll cover more Björk in the future. Thanks everyone so much for listening. We have a subreddit now, so go over to r/, music posting podcast. You can suggest music to listen to. We also have a Twitter at music posting pod, where we will sort of announce what we're doing next. But we are gonna not listen to an album next time. We are actually going to we're gonna cover like just a barrage of albums that we really like in 2023. So next album will be a little different. It'll be a little more, or next episode will be a little different. It'll be a little more lighthearted. We're just gonna zoom through some of our favorite music moments of 2023. So look forward to that. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say, Alex?
Thank you everyone so much for listening.
All the
Uh
support.
all the support, appreciate you. Um Yeah.
As
I
always,
as always, what do we
this
say
is
again?
this is music posting. I'm Astrid.
I'm Alex.
Bye.
Later, skater.
You remembered it was later, skater.
Well, it just came to me all of a sudden.
Later,
Yeah.
skater.
Later, skaters.